Good evening and welcome to eCube 2021, the pandemic virtual version. We're so happy that you've joined us. Next year, we're going to be able to welcome you into the Science Center for eCube 2022. For now, our annual tradition will persevere through this online eCubed experience. But now, for a bit of audience viewer participation, here comes the question. In eCubed, what are the three E's? Now, your answer must be in the correct order and spelled correctly. Make sure that when you submit your answer into the chat room of whatever streaming device you're using, that you include your first and last name. Now the prize, 5 general admission tickets valued up to $45, redeemable anytime during 2021. Send your answer via a chat room, and if we get the correct answer, we'll announce it before this show is over. Again, what are the three E's in eCubed? And now to the show. Our traditional features of the evening is our live show, our blend of scientific demonstration and witty entertainment offered up for your enjoyment. Tonight, HSC educators James and Chuck will continue this tradition by presenting exciting and fascinating illustrations of basic scientific concepts. Our first demonstration shows a substance changing its physical state and how that change can make things happen. Chuck is pouring warm water into this pipe. James is holding a flask of liquid nitrogen. James pours it into the pipe with the warm water, and then he caps the pipe. We live at the bottom of a sea of nitrogen. Our atmosphere is almost 5/5 nitrogen, a colorless, odorless, tasteless, invisible gas. In order to get nitrogen to be a liquid, you have to slow the molecules down and get them closer together. That means it has to get very cold. Slower moving molecules means colder. Next up, James is pouring liquid nitrogen into a larger beaker that is 1/3 full of water. This produces a rolling cloud that overflows the beaker and then falls like a white waterfall.
What you see here is what just happened in the pipe. The liquid nitrogen contacted the water in the beaker and the glass of the beaker itself, both of which are hundreds of degrees warmer than the liquid nitrogen's 321 degrees below zero. This caused the liquid nitrogen immediately to start boiling, changing its state from liquid to gas. The molecules of nitrogen gas are moving much faster and farther apart, so they take up much more space than they did in the liquid space. More space than the empty volume of the beaker, so it overflows. The still cold nitrogen slows down the molecules of water vapor in the air, the humidity, until they condense into tiny droplets of liquid water that form a cloud that we call fog. This sinks because it is colder and denser than the air around it.
Now, for a little bit of local color. Legend has it that one winter it was so cold in the North Woods that when Paul Bunyan's crew went out to cut trees, their axes shattered the first time they struck the frozen trunk. Paul thought, this is bad. I can't make any profit from having my men out here trying to fell trees. In this weather, all that does is ruin tools, and tools are expensive. If I just keep my men in camp, I'll pay out a fortune just to feed them with nothing to show for it. These men, they eat a lot. So, Paul had an idea. There'd been a big shipment of meat to feed the crew, and it had just arrived into camp. Most of it was pork. Paul's idea? He took a big cut of pork. He shaped it. As he shaped it, he began to think about the handle that he was going to put into it. And so, he created a shape for the pork handle. He then applied the handle. And that's when he said, I'm going to set this outside. So he took the pork chop and he set it outside so that it could freeze. And when it was good, and when it was good and solid, he took it out. He sharpened an edge to it. And that's when he tried cutting down the tree with it. In that extreme cold, it worked pretty well. So for the rest of that long cold snap, the loggers all cut timber with super frozen meat. Now the new tools didn't last as long as steel axes. As we know, repeated hard impact makes both the thing being hit and the thing doing the hitting hot. In this story, Paul's loggers were very hard-working men. So, by about lunchtime each day, new axes had cooked. So the crew ate their axes for lunch. The cook gang didn't have to do any cooking, so they spent all their time preparing the new meat axes and setting them out to freeze for the loggers to use in the afternoon. Then the men would eat their afternoon axes for dinner. And after a while, they got a little tired of pork, but by that time, the weather started to warm up, and they were able to go back to using their steel axes. So everyone was pretty happy with Paul's idea. Some of the animals in the woods, in fact, took advantage of this entire situation. After dark, when the humans were all asleep, wolves, coyotes, lynx, wolverines, fishers, weasels, bobcats, foxes, all the predators would make their way to their day's work site just to lick the stumps. You see, innovation has spin-off benefits. It took imagination and ingenuity to engineer cuts of pork into a solution to a difficult problem.
Cuts of pork? They're called pork chops.
Yeah, now they're called pork chops. A traditional part of E-Cubed is the formulating of a signature flaming cocktail. It is quite fancy, usually. James and Chuck have come up with a secret formula this year that they believe will be a hit. Let's see your secret formula.
Well, wait a minute, I forgot to add the flame.
Let's see your flaming cocktail. Really? Really? You do an entire evening lighting everything up the entire evening at the Science Center and you can't produce even one flaming cocktail? Maybe you need to review some basic concepts of combustion.
Combustion is a 10-letter word that pretty much means fire. It is a very rapid exothermic chemical reaction that combines oxygen with substances in a fuel. In the combustion of most common fuels, oxygen is combining with carbon. Exothermic means that once the reaction gets started, it gives off energy, the heat and light we feel and see once in the flame. So 3 things are needed for combustion. Oxygen, usually that comes from the atmosphere. A fuel, a substance that contains something that will readily and rapidly combine with oxygen. And adequate heat to get that reaction started. With that non-flaming cocktail, there was oxygen present in the air and a flame to supply the heat. Looks like they had a problem with their fuel.
Well, of course, if you do it that way.
This time, they had a good fuel that provided a lot of carbon to combine rapidly with the oxygen in the air. Mixed with the fuel was lithium chloride that also combined rapidly with oxygen and gave the flame its special color. The flame got much larger when Chuck spins the device because the basket moving around the flame tends to move more air, which means more oxygen into the flame. As the spinning flame grew, it created an updraft, producing a zone of lower air pressure. Surrounding air at normal air pressure rushed towards the lower pressure, drawing more oxygen into the flame. This shows that changing one of the three things needed for combustion can change the combustion reaction dramatically.
Continuing with our fire theme, our next demonstration shows some wet fire. Most of the time, when fire is presented, getting fuels to burn is difficult. But that isn't always true. It might depend on what fuels you're using. Observe.
The gas that James is releasing under the surface of the soapy water is hydrogen. It is the most common element in the known universe. It is the nuclear fuel for stars like our sun. It is the simplest element in the universe, and it is very reactive. It reacts readily and rapidly with oxygen. Released into the soapy water, it forms bubbles filled with hydrogen. Even though the gas has passed through the water, and the envelopes of the bubbles are made up of soap and water, the hydrogen inside is still able to combine with oxygen.
And we have a winner on tonight's question. The winner is Grant Williams, responding first on Facebook. Grant, you can come to the Headwater Science Center and pick up your winning prize. That's 5 admission tickets. You can use them as you wish anytime in 2021. Thanks for participating tonight in our audience participation contest. And now, we have come to the finale of our live show. It's traditional to end with a bang. That's an exploding balloon. Is that all you can do? Let me show you how this is done. This is the way we can really make it. Boom! Gotcha that time, guys.
That was the lamest thing you've done all day.
Yeah.
Crying out loud.
Yep. Gotcha. Whoa!